Steve Friend, FBI whistleblower, and a guy who honestly should be reinstated at the FBI and be running a few things, I think, along with all the other whistleblowers that were ushered out by the last administration. Steve, welcome to the program.
Great to be here. Thanks, Dylan.
Thanks. Do you have any comments on what's happening with, or what we should expect from the client list from Epstein today?
Well, I mean, I've just been on record on that there is no expectation of privacy because Jeffrey Epstein is no longer alive. So I've always kind of scratched my head at the fact that it was kept back. And if there's any sort of insinuation, well, it could compromise and jeopardize ongoing investigations. I think we're at a level in this country that we need to have the transparency. And this should have been put out there. And, you know, I was listening to your numbers, Glenn, 1, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to put it at a 6.66. I think that's probably the
So do you expect that there is information in there that we don't know that's meaningful?
I think that it will be meaningful. I mean, if they went through the lengths that they did, and I mean, if memory serves, I've always been, this is an unpopular opinion, Jeffrey Epstein was charged in violation of double jeopardy. And so, I mean, I'm not crying for the guy because he was fundamentally an evil person who's probably burning eternally in hell right now.
Right.
But the fact that this has been used, this list, to charge Ghislaine Maxwell for trafficking, but we don't know to who. I mean, the way that it was handled, it just never passed the smell test. And I think that this is one of those big pillar type of moments where they can turn over a new leaf and push forward that transparency is the rule of the day. It's in keeping with what we're seeing at the Doge and completely government-wide right now.
And it doesn't mean anything if it's released and there's no action. I think that's why Cash passed it to Bondi, because if there are, pretty significant names in there, I would imagine the prosecution has to follow pretty quickly, or it'll just look like a nothing burger. Because nobody expects any bad guy to ever go to jail anymore in the government.
It does, and look, he's keeping in with what James Comey didn't, and that was when James Comey stood up and said that no reasonable prosecutor will bring charges against Hillary Clinton. That was never his call to make. That goes to the Department of Justice.
Correct.
So I think Cash handing it over to the Attorney General Bondi here, let her make that assessment is probably the right way to go.
So they were apparently, another whistleblower was saying that the FBI, as Cash was getting ready to come in and coming in, they were shredding documents like they were, going to do a ticker tape parade for the astronauts in New York City. And I'm wondering how much may have been lost, and can we get the FBI back on track? Are there enough good guys in there, and are there enough good guys that know where to look and know who the bad guys are?
The level of subterfuge that went on during the transition period, and then even during the Trump administration before Kash Patel was elevated to become the director, was enormous. I mean, it wasn't just limited to document shredding, as Garrett O'Boyle brought forth. I mean, when it comes to the ICE deportation raids, the FBI at first was letting people opt out, and they still are. They're saying, well, if you have a moral objection to going after Tren de Aragua, then you don't have to participate in it. They're openly having conversations.
Who has a moral case against arresting those guys?
I think you just have to look no further than the hiring practices over the last 10 to 12 years when they really elevated and prioritized diversity. I mean, the core values of the FBI, rigorous obedience to the Constitution, used to be it. And then they put that last behind diversity, and they've just fundamentally changed the personnel who are in there. So, the subterfuge is enormous, but I think it is going to be contingent and hinge on how guys like Garrett O'Boyle and Kyle Seraphin, myself and others who are not as public, are handled now. Because if we set the precedent that if you come forward for the right reasons at the right time, the right way,
you're rewarded.
Then not even just rewarded, just you aren't having your life completely crushed. I mean, Garrett and I both are 1 week apart on our suspensions indefinitely. We hit 29 months this week. So, I mean, there needs to be some movement on that. And if it does happen, then people will know that the Bureau now is going to have the back of people who come forward for the right reasons. And I think that there will be more people coming forward because they know where the bodies are buried. And they're not going to have to try to launder it to just a few of us out here in the Twitter space or the content creation space to hopefully that we can bring it out.
Have you been contacted by Cash or anybody at the FBI? I mean, because I think, one thing I like about Cash is he knows firsthand what the FBI is capable of because they did it to him. And the same thing with you guys. Has anybody reached out about the possibility of you guys not only coming back, but leading some of this house cleaning?
And we haven't had any of those conversations. No, not at this point, which, and I don't think any of us are aspiring to do that. Fundamentally, we're sort of in Isaiah 6:8 moment where, whom shall I send? Here I am, send me. It's a recognition of I'm on the hill, and if called to serve, I will. We certainly have a lot of information. We have a lot of thoughts, and if they want that, that'd be great and fantastic. But I live in Florida, and I wear shorts every day. I don't know how I feel about going to the swamp.
Right. By the way, I so agree that I heard the other day that it's an insult to swamps to call it. It's more of a sewer. A swamp is not bad enough. What do you think we need to see from Kash Patel that would say to us, we're serious, we're correcting that, we're cleaning this thing up? Go ahead.
I think a very public firings of some of the worst actors who we do know names of, we've brought forward, would be great. I think a very public announcement that the FBI is going away and completely ending its intelligence collection apparatus on the American people, doing away with the quota system that they've had for the last 11 years called integrated program management that's driving it forward, restating how they're going to bring in people of merit and no longer going to prioritize diversity and use the FBI Academy as some sort of washout program. Just make it a competent law enforcement training program that makes meritorious people capable investigators. Like, those are the sorts of changes that you can have. And I think as long as we're on the topic of something like an Epstein list, if I could have my choice of any one of those stories that you have, and there's a lot of them, I want to see the Butler, Pennsylvania case completely opened up. Again, that individual has no expectation of privacy. He's no longer alive. The fact that the FBI purposely said that it was potentially domestic terrorism, and to justify that said it was because of the congressional baseball shooting, because they had erred in that decision to call that not an assassination attempt. They said that the Bernie Sanders supporter who arrived at the baseball fields and asked where the Republicans and then tried to murder them all wasn't an assassin. It was suicide by cop. They labeled Butler domestic terrorism, and that puts a classified label on it, and they can't comment on that. I'm sorry, Senator or Congressman. It's an ongoing investigation. Well, the victim is at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. He's entitled to that, and as are the people who put him there.
So let's just come up with a quick list here, if you don't mind, Steve. Okay, Butler. What else should be opened up? Butler, I think the
J6 pipe bomber, the weapons of mass destruction, the sole act of possible terrorism on January 6, 2021, who never struck again for the last 4 years mysteriously, and the FBI claimed the cell phone data was corrupted, but then the cell phone provider said no, it wasn't. They're still lying about that. I think we could probably go to Las Vegas, the Vegas shooting, one of the worst mass shootings in the history of the country. With the memory hold pretty quickly after that if they got the bump stock.
Yeah, what do you think that was? What are your thoughts on that, Steve?
If I have to put on my theorizing hat speculation, I think there was a deconfliction issue there where multiple agencies were involved. I think that Stephen Paddock, who interestingly, his father was on the FBI top 10 most wanted list, that Paddock was probably working with some government agency, was selling weapons to a terrorist organization, laundering it through the casino to justify having it. And then he happened to sell to the wrong people who perpetuated the attack at that moment. And then the government said, oh, Nelly, we might have just materially supported terrorism ourselves.
Good heavens. I even thought, I don't want to live in your brain. That's a frightening thought.
This is what happens when you're at home for 29 months, Glenn.
The Clinton case with her email servers. I'd like to see that.
And also, I think it's worth getting into the fact that we now have the expose. I mean, it's dated information. It just didn't get the public awareness. Was the honeypot scheme that James Comey ran on Donald Trump's campaign in 2015? Yeah.
Explain that. That just came out a couple of days ago.
Well, it actually came back in October of last year. Kerry Pickett reports that James Comey ran off the books, so nothing was officially opened up. He had 2 female agents infiltrate Donald Trump's campaign to put themselves out as sexually available to try to elicit information that they could then open up criminal investigations on members of the Trump campaign. And when it came to light, because media actually took a photograph of one of the agents, they pulled the plug, promoted one to a high-level senior executive position, and moved the other one over to CIA so that they wouldn't have to be called to testify. And this is James Comey calling the shots on this as the director of the FBI, trying to impact the presidential election.
You know, one of the things I thought of, we go back to the Epstein case. If you look at the Epstein file, we all know that one way or another, Prince Andrew's name is going to be on there. And I believe today, the Prime Minister of England is visiting the White House. How unbelievably awkward would it be if our Department of Justice has released information showing that Prince Andrew was involved in something this horrendous? I mean, we all know he was, but I mean, for the government to make it very clear that, yep, here's how many times, here's where he was, here was in the room, here was on the plane with him, on the day the Prime Minister of England comes, wow, that's going to be an awkward meeting.
Well, it'll be fun, but I think if anybody can handle that in front of the media, it would be Donald Trump. And if it's conduct of Prince Andrew, I mean, I'm sorry, that's on you. I mean,
no, I know that.
I'm just revealing it.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying. I don't like conflict so much. I would be the guy who is like, I'm going to leave you guys here for a minute. I'm going to go. Would you guys like a cup of coffee or a Diet Coke or something? I could go run out and get that while you just chit chat here for a minute. I don't like it. It's going to be awkward. It's going to be real awkward.
Trump would be extinguishing a tiki torch as we were revealing the name.
I know. Steve, thank you so much. Thanks for all of your service in the past, and thanks for keeping us up to speed.